there's different strategies that come into buying NFTs, and it's not either or. There's many different types of them. It's very much like the stock market. You do get your more established projects, your call them blue chips, right? Which is not the right term, because typically a blue chip's been around for 10 years and has a board and whatever. But in the NFT space, you call them blue chips. Like examples of this are Cool Cats, Bored Ape Yacht Club, even World of Women has been around a long time and been consistent and delivered, and many, many more. Right, Gutter Cats, I would say, is getting there for sure. So those are your blue chip shares, and then you get your small cap shares, which are a lot cheaper. And if you buy 1,000 small cap shares, some of those companies long term are going to end up doing well, and you might end up with a blue chip. And that's the same. It's the same here. And you've really got to see your risk level or your risk tolerance, and then decide accordingly what suits you best. Could be one approach, it could be the other, or could be a mixture of both of them. Now, there's definitely benefits to investing in short-term projects, and there's benefits to investing for the long term. I'm going to be covering what we're calling flipping or paper handing, where you're investing for relatively short term. And Morland's going to be covering the diamond hand or the long-term investment approach, right? Now, at the moment, we know the market is booming. We just showed you, and there are really people making a fortune. I mean, there's a guy who bought a Doodles at $5,000 and sold it 4 days later for $325,000. Right?
Oh, man.
So I mean, it's life-changing.
Life-changing.
Now, those cases are few and far between. And you've got to know that. You've got to know going in, it's risky. Do your own research. That's why everyone says, do your own research. We aren't giving you financial advice. We're assuming you're in the space and you're going to be here. And we want to try and just give you some of what we've learned and some tools that will up your chances of being successful in the space. But in no way does any of this guarantee success in any way. So just be aware of that going in. And obviously, the more time you spend in the NFT space, the easier it becomes to recognize the trends and to spot red flags and things like that. And obviously, time does help a lot. But another thing is that the NFT space is constantly changing. So certain things that were red flags previously are no longer so important, and other things that were bullish recently and very positive for a project are no longer the case. So it is a very difficult space to master, and that's why we always say we know nothing. We just going to share with you, and hopefully something helps you on your NFT journey.
Learn from our mistakes. That's what we're trying to do here.
If you can. So we're going to take you through the benefits and the risks of both approaches, so that you can decide on your best strategy. So with flipping, straight away people assume it means like buying immediately and with the intention of selling immediately, like within the next few hours, even minutes. And that is one of the approaches. One of the approaches is just to identify the short-term trends, and there's some tools that you can use to identify those trends. So if you go, for example, I'll take you to IC Tools, and if you have a look here, IC Tools will show you I've got five minutes selected here. So this is I've paid for IC Tools. It's not too expensive, especially if you're in the space. I think it was 0.1 ETH, if I'm not mistaken. That's what I think. But if you don't pay for it, you can only see, I think, 30 minutes trends, right? Now, this is going to show you the top project sales on OpenSea for the last 30 minutes. And you can see the Moon is the top one in the last 30 minutes with 140 sales. Then the next one is WVRPS with 58 sales, and so on and so forth. Now, when you're really trying to flip, you want the 1 or 5 minute chart. Let's go to the 5 minute, because you want to see the top projects that are booming, and you want to compare that every 5 minutes, right? So that you can get a good idea. So you see here, one that we saw in the 30 minutes is still there, the Moon. but the WVRPS has fallen down on the 5 minute. So Moon seems to be pumping. Now, you want to carry on watching that. And if this number of sales, and you can also jump to OpenSea and see the number of sales, if this number of sales is increasing, then you can assume very, very short term that this price is going to continue increasing. So you can wait to see for a few minutes of the increase. Once you're confident it then goes 64, 65, 66, then you can come in, buy in, and when you start seeing it go 63, 62, 61, 60, you sell out. And that's a very short-term flipping strategy. Now, I would actually sit on the 1 minute chart for that, because I don't want to wait 20 minutes waiting for the 5 minutes to reflect, because by then your opportunity might be gone. So you'd sit here, wait a minute, see if this number goes up or down, wait another minute. If it goes up twice in a row, buy in. If it goes down twice in a row, get out. Okay? And at the floor. Not worried about traits, because in the end of the day, these collections could go to 0 in 6 hours, and you don't care if you've got the most rare or not. You don't care who the team is. You are simply being a degen, and you are flipping short term. Now, the very important thing to take into account when you're doing this is you have to know your costs. So the cost of the floor of this particular NFT is 0.17. But as we've said before, when you buy that, you're going to have to pay gas. Gas is currently 112. That will equate to 0.3 plus minus, 0.03, sorry, plus minus. So you buying in for 0.21. When you sell at 0.21, you're paying 10%. 7.5 on average to the collection and 2.5 to OpenSea. So 0.21, if you sell it at 0.25, you paying another 0.025 on top of that. So you've got to have a spreadsheet with your costs so that you know, okay, all in after I sell it, my cost on this is actually going to be 0.23. Is more like it on a 0.17. So what is the point of me selling at 0.24? There's no point. You want to ideally try and sell at 0.3, somewhere around there, if you want to make any sort of profit. Because remember, you're taking a risk here. And look what just happened. It's gone from 11 to 7. So now everyone is going to quickly try and sell. So the risk
just
has
dropped
got
to 4. Just dropped
there
to
we
4.
go. So that's what's happening. But I don't know how long it's been on this chart. But the bottom line is that the risk has got to justify the reward. And that's why you want to try and identify projects before they're at such a high floor price of 0.17. You ideally want to try and identify projects on these charts that are sitting at 0.02, 0.03, somewhere around there, because it's more realistic that those will reach a 0.1 than a 0.171 will reach a 0.3, right? So that's flipping. And the tool that I'm looking at here, as we said, is IC Tools. The other nice thing about IC Tools is you can actually see the minting trends as well. So you're not only watching what's selling on the secondary market, but also the mints. You can create watch lists, which have got certain things. So you can choose which projects to put in those watch lists. You can create your own feeds. But if you want to see what's minting at the moment, we can go to Discover. And you can see the Moon is the one we've been looking at. That's what's minting at the moment. And interestingly enough, the mint price is 0.2. So people are actually selling it down at the moment. That's why there's so many transactions. So it is very important to know whether it's a minted project or one that's already been minted. So it seems like this project is not doing well. It's literally being minted now, and the floor price is already half of the mint price, which is a big, big warning sign. The other thing you've got to be careful of with this type of degen flipping is to make sure whatever projects you're looking into are not free mints. Because if they're free mints, they're going to blow up these charts. You're going to see 1,000 mints in 1 minute. You're going to think, oh my God, what is this? You're going to go to OpenSea and you're going to end up paying 0.1 for something that costs 0. And everyone is in it for 0. They're all going to be happy to sell at 0.05. And you're going to be stuck holding the bag. So you can't just use the 1 minute trending. That's not okay. You've got to make sure that you use all the information that you have at your disposal. Sorry, my laptop just unplugged itself. There we go. It's plugged back in. Okay, so that's the one side. That's the one side. Degen flipping. The other thing good to know in degen flipping is you want to have a good alpha group or two. You want to be in discords with guys you trust that have good alpha, and often they'll make calls and they'll say, "Look, this is going to pump and whatever." And if you know the guys made good calls before, then that's a great way to know which projects to get into before they even appear on the charts, right? The other approach, what you can do is to mint with the intention of flipping at some stage in the short term. So here you do want to look at the roadmap. You do want to understand the team because you want to know that it's got good short-term potential at the very least. And typically, if you can get whitelist on a mint that's very hyped, let's say got 50,000 in the Discord, 100,000 on Twitter, everyone's talking about it. If you can get whitelist on those and the mint price is fair, let's say 0.1, maximum 0.2, before reveal, you could almost always sell at a 5x. Really. So if you look even at Ox Origin that we looked at before reveal hit all the way 1.8. So if you had bought in there, you could easily sell at 1.2, not even wait for the top, and maybe even hold one. Then you've paid for both your mints. And if you believe in it long term, you can hold it, right? But there you want to try and get in as low as possible, which is why I'm saying you want to mint with the intention of selling at least one. And when would you want to sell? Make sure you sell pre-reveal. I would find out exactly what time reveal is, and literally 30 minutes before reveal, go in there and sell, because that's really when it's going to be the highest price. If you love the project, once the artwork comes out, 99% of the time the floor drops, because there's a lot of people that were expecting a rare and they didn't get it. There's some people that like the design but don't like their particular NFT and want to sell theirs and get one that they like even though they love the project. And you find that typically there's up to a 50% drop post reveal. So 24 hours after reveal, then it starts to normalize again. And then, so you can buy in those minutes after reveal. If you wait a few hours after reveal and let it go down a bit, if you see it's going down, you can often buy at mint, sell pre-reveal, and then buy in again at a 50% discount if you want to be in the project long term. So that's another type of flipping. Obviously, that comes with doing research on Twitter, Instagram, following notable people on Twitter, seeing what the hyped projects are going to be, going into those Discords, going onto those Twitters, like what we do for you here, and identifying those that are going to be hyped. Now, there is still risk with that, because there was an example of Al Capone's, which was early on. You remember that, Morland?
Yeah, I remember that project. Yeah.
That was probably the most hyped project of its time. Up until then, there was never projects with 200,000 in Discord. People were selling their cars to get Ethereum. This was a sure thing. You were going to buy in at 0.1 before they did a whitelist. Before they opened to the public, the floor was at 3 or 4 Ethereum. Okay. And then the public came and it was a huge mess up. The contract failed. There was big problems and people lost a lot of money. So the bottom line is that when you're buying into new projects, you do not know what you're getting, right? You think you know, you can do your research, even if the team has the best intentions, which let's assume Al Capone's did. They could still have a stuff up in the contract, a stuff up in the artwork that makes your NFT worthless. And if you caught holding that bag, you've lost what you've invested. If you minted it, your risk is less because you paid the lowest you possibly could, especially if it's on pre-sale. But we are seeing projects at the moment that are selling at 1 ETH pre-sale, like a JRNY, this Your Mama's House that's coming up by Sheldon, this other YouTuber. They're minting at 1 ETH. That's the starting price. That's not a small investment. So you got to know, buying into new projects, even with doing your own research and everything we discussed, which I'm going to link above, doing your own research, all those different things, look into the utility, the team, the community, all of that is still risky. So then we get to another type of flipping, which is when you buy off the secondary market. So you look at projects that have been around for a bit longer, that have a track record, that you can see have delivered on their roadmap, and you buy into them at a point that you think is the lowest, with the intention of selling when it pumps. Now, this works really well in market dips. You'll see when Ethereum price goes up, when gas, there was a time 6 weeks ago where gas was on average 300, on average, sometimes hit 5,000. On average, you couldn't find gas cheaper than 280 for weeks. And that obviously affects a lot of NFTs, especially the lower valued ones, right? That's a great time to be sniping good projects that you've pre-identified, that you know you want to get into. But at the moment, with the what market we're in now, it's not the time to get into those, because you're paying the absolute top. And a lot of this has to do with your entry price. No matter what strategy you choose, the cheaper you buy, the better, and the higher you sell, the better. Okay, it sounds obvious, but that's what you're trying. That's what you're trying to achieve. So what you could do is you could identify on the secondary market already existing projects that you've looked into that you really want to be involved in. And you maybe have 5 or 10. And if you look on my screen, oh, we don't have to look. I've got a whole bookmark tab saying NFTs to buy. And I haven't bought any of them in this market at the moment, but I watch them and I watch the price. And, Al Capone's was one of them on there. Sorry, not Al Capone's. What are those llamas? Elka Packets.
Alpacatraz.
Alpacatraz was one of them
that
on there.
one.
So I had one. I had bought in when the market was horrible at 0.2. When it hit 1 ETH the other day, I sold. It went to 1.3 ETH. I did a lot more research, and they've got a lot coming out. Metaverse Land they've already bought. Okay, Sandbox and NFT Worlds. They've got 3D llamas coming out. They've got VX llamas coming out, all free to mint. Like amazing stuff what they're doing. And I thought, shit, I maybe shouldn't have sold. This was a long-term hold that I didn't know what they had done so much. And I should have looked into that because it went from 0.2 to 1. I should have known. But I just thought market conditions are great. And then I watched it for days. I'm talking in this market now. And I saw one day it hit 0.78. And I bought one at 0.78. And then now again at 1.1 or whatever. But I wanted to get back in. But I didn't go straight away and get back in because it was 1.2, 1.3. I watched it for days. So you want to be careful with your buy-in point. That's really, really important. And obviously the price that you sell at.
Well, and you also mentioned something there about keeping on top of the projects, right? Like if you are looking to flip, you got to remember that, hey, I have this project sitting in my back pocket. I wonder what they're doing today in their Discord, and keep on top of it. They could be pumping out announcements and the price could be going through the roof, and you're just sitting there and you have no clue, and you miss that pump, and then it comes back down, right? And then you're left holding the bag. So staying
before
involved
you
in
sell,
those communities.
go check the Discord 100%. The trouble, the difficulty with me, honestly, is that literally there's 100 different projects that I've got an NFT of. And sometimes, you're just on a selling spree, and also if you are a flipper, and I'm not saying I am, in some projects I'm a diamond at, but at Doge Pound, I haven't wanted to sell ever, even when it went to 4 ETH. My mutant, even though I flipped it, I wanted to get back in. I did get back in. So that's the other side, is that even if you're in a project that you've looked into and you want to hold long term, you believe in it long term, there are times where there's opportunities to sell and then buy back and buy back in. Now, you don't have a crystal ball. You don't know if you're going to be able to buy back in. And that happened to me on Doodles. As you know, I sold at 2.8 or whatever, and I intended to buy back in. It will never get below 5 ever again, even in the worst condition, right? And I think it probably won't get below 10. So you'll miss some, but there's a lot of projects out there, so you will miss some in the end of the day. But with me, there is, I would say 80% of my projects that I'm involved in, there is a price that I've predetermined that I will sell no matter what, and with the intention of buying back in. If I can, if I can't, I leave the project and I move on. And that price depends on how invested I am in it. The more I like it, the more long-term value it has. Like we said the other day, right? I wouldn't sell my mutant for anything. And you were like 100 ETH. 50 ETH, 30 ETH, probably, right? but not a 15, right? So there is a point where you want to take your profits, and people are funny. They tend to think just because we're in a bull market now, we're always going to be in a bull market. And then when we're in a bear market, we're always going to be in a bear market. And it's not the case. So in a bull market, my approach is not to sell everything, but to sell a lot of what I can with the intention of buying back in the bear market. And obviously, I do lose opportunities of some, one or two get away from me, World of Woman, Doodles, but I'm able to buy back into most of them, and I've pocketed 2 or 3 ETH in each of them along the way.
Yeah. It's worked out in your favor for sure in a lot of different flipping cases. Like you've made profit, and then there's been ones where you wish you maybe hadn't sold it, but you still made profit, right?
For sure. But I do think if I had held on to my top 2 or 3 that I didn't know were my top 2 or 3 at the time, like my Doodles, my World of Woman, I would be in a better situation financially than I am now. I would be more profitable than I am now if I just held, you know. But again, I mean, it's hard to calculate because the money that I got from selling, I did use to reinvest in NFTs and made profits along the way, which I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So it's difficult to know. And that's the point, is there's value in all approaches. But I think what's important is to weigh up your personal risk factor and then have a strategy that fits in with that risk factor.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And I just wanted to show you before I jump to you, Morlan. Sorry, my man.
No
another
worries.
great tool is mobi.gg. Okay, and we'll put links to all these tools. So you've got IC tools, the one I showed you that shows you the minting per minute, as well as the trending on OpenSea per minute. Then you've got this other one called Mobi, which is very similar. Also shows you trending, mints, sales. But the nice thing about Mobi is that you can follow whales. And that's a big part of, regardless of your strategy, whales are a big part of this, because whales are guys with huge wallets, but also not just rich guys who know the space, have a lot of connections in the space, like a Gary Vee, for example, and may have access to alpha information that most people don't know yet. And it's sort of insider trading if you think about it. So what people do is they tend to track his wallet. And if they see that he's aping into a project, which means buying a lot of a project, they will blindly follow that. And that strategy can work. Now, obviously, you've got to be careful of a lot of things. A lot of clever projects, when they mint, they airdrop a lot of their NFTs to the notable wallets so that it looks to people like those guys are actually minting that NFT themselves. So you do have to look at those transactions when it's a mint transaction. But when it's on the secondary market, it's very easy to see it came from his wallet, he paid X amount, and it went to another wallet. That's a transaction. So Mobi's is a great tool to be able to follow whales, and here it shows you whales. And you can then go in and you can look at their trading history. And another great tool, which we'll go through in a separate episode because it's a whole episode on its own, is Nansen. And over there, you can dig into these whales. I mean, here you can a bit, but on Nansen, you can dig into those whales so deeply. You can look at every transaction, what they bought, what they sold, and it sums it up for you. And that if you really getting into this as a full-time degen or full-time NFT trader, you need to have Nansen. But you can see here on Mobi, much cheaper, much more affordable. You can get alerts when they buy or sell certain things. And you can also follow particular wallets. So, like, let's say you think that I invest well, which I do not. You could get my you could get my wallet address, right? And you could then, all right. So, how do you get my wallet address? So you know that I've got my mutant ape, which my wife. This is the surprise.
Oh, nice! She finished it.
A painting for me of my mutant, which is going on the wall with
a live hang up. Awesome.
I mean, in
live installation.
In the 1920s, a live hanging was very different. But you see, there's my mutant right under my wolf. but you could find that mutant very easily on my Discord. It's got even my mutant number, and you can then see who owns it, and you could click on that, and you could put that wallet's address and follow me. I do not advise it. I'm a mixture of both approached, and I don't do any of what I've just advised you. I work purely on emotion, and ape into stuff. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. But I must say, as I said, and I really want to hand over to Morland because diamond handing is important. But I must say that if I had to choose which approach I think is most profitable, I would be a diamond hander. I would relax. I would take my time to research, and I would hold those projects long term.